Guys, greetings from Slovakia, which is a European heritage building and a 20th century Slovak landmark. It was built actually during the normalization era, and it's one building that's quite jarring, definitely for foreigners, because it represents a very unusual form, the inverted pyramid. And I just want to explain why this building is actually very significant and what its structure represents. So it's actually an embodiment in engineering form, so in stone and metal form. The whole ideology of the communist regime, which in itself was really, really radical when it came about. So the ideology represented a complete inversion of the power structure that had existed on Earth up until then, which was a kind of hierarchy of power, or hierarchy of competence, or hierarchy of wealth, where you had the peasant class at the bottom, you had different echelons of workers, clerks, noblemen, and ultimately there was the monarch above that ruled over all. Monarchs, of course, were descendants of blue blood and were completely removed from the masses, the red-blooded masses. So when communism came around and was implemented in Russia in 1917, it inverted this pyramid, and this is a symbolic representation of that inversion. So communism was all about the workers and peasants ruling. So the workers and peasants being at the top of the hierarchy. And in this case, because the workers and peasants are actually the majority mass of society, you have this representation where you had the largest social strata actually ruling all, and therefore completely inverting the traditional structure. Hierarchies of worth, hierarchies of competence, hierarchies of skills, but also hierarchies of wealth. Wealth that had been built through also domination and war and killing, plundering, etc. But that is not to say that the communists had clean hands. They too killed and plundered. You had actually the peasants being particularly brutal in the countryside when they went on murdering the wealthier farmers, seizing their assets and burning them. A lot of bonfires happening also in Slovakia, where any kind of symbol of bourgeoisie, of aristocracy, of the old world power structures was piled up into front yards or backyards and burnt. A paradigm of organizing social strata, of organizing society was over. I do have to say that I am a little bit in awe at just how far and how quickly this idea spread. So we had Karl Marx that wrote, and Frederick Engels that wrote the Communist Manifesto. They wrote it in Germany. They put the theory out there, but it was actually the Russians that implemented it. And once they implemented it, they didn't just stop with their country, which they transformed into USSR, so Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. But they actually spread it beyond that. So you had the ideology infiltrate the Soviet satellite states, so the Soviet bloc countries of Eastern Europe that were behind the Iron Curtain, but also many other parts of the world, including Vietnam, including many parts of Africa, including Mongolia, and of course China. So this idea obviously deeply, deeply resonated with humanity, or else it wouldn't have spread so quickly. Humans, especially after the Second World War, were desperate. They wanted change. They knew that the way that the society was working up until then was no longer of service to them. I mean, if you think about it, the time lapse between the First World War and the Second World War is only 20 years. So you can say it's actually one continuous long conflict that cost millions upon tens of millions of lives. So the people after the war, they didn't want to face another conflict, and they wanted hope. They wanted a new ideal, and communism provided that. It said, hey, The way society has been working up until now is flawed because you have an elite structure at the top of the pyramid that is making decisions for the masses. What's going to happen if we invert that structure and we give power to the workers and peasants? And I'm not using the word peasant to be elitist or to make fun of that word. No, I'm actually using it in the sense that it was utilized during that era. Proletariat power were the workers and peasants, and those two words were often combined, and they equaled the proletariat, which meant the greater mass, which meant the honest workers. This building behind me is a beautiful testament to that effort, or to what happened during that era. So I hope you like this. I hope you found it informative. Please remember, we do have a Kickstarter campaign where you can pre-order our book. We would really appreciate your support, and hope you have a great day. So lots of love from Bratislava. Mwah.